G'day there, ladies and gents of the internet. I am the Braveheart Aussie and welcome to a journey in world building. Before we start, just a quick reminder about my Patreon page. By the time this video drops, the first 3 lore cards should now be complete and available for Patreons at certain reward tiers. So if you want to support the channel and our world building efforts and get an awesome collector's card to go along with it, go and check out the link in the description below. In the last video, we introduced the Diaspora itself, discussed what it is and perhaps more importantly what it isn't. We talked about themes of isolation, deprivation, desperation, and the general lack of diaspora-wide unity. I did my best, as I'd mentioned before, to avoid too many references to specific settings, so some of these were touched on in the lore video. This includes the Tarvan Covenant, which I'll discuss next week as one of the few genuinely ubiquitous institutes across the diaspora. The other was the Merchants of the Coalition. So let's take a few moments to explore this particular faction, who they are, what they represent, and how they embody some of the worst aspects of interstellar economics within the diaspora. First, in terms of the economy, as I reinforced last week, there is no universal government laws or rules. While there are pockets of regulated space within regional authorities or systems with major independent planets, these are by far the exception rather than the rule. Trade is differentiated between the transport by pod and by charter and passage related travel. For the former, you can imagine long streams of pods flowing across space at sub-FTL speeds between major planets and stations within more developed systems. These pods would be mostly focused on primary or raw resources and maybe some manufactured goods, and would be a low-cost, non-urgent form of goods transport. These pod-based trade flows would also extend to interstellar travel, though this travel would be more instantaneous between systems. But at either end, you'd be having the pods gathering in holding areas. Both the flow of the pods and these holding areas would therefore make ideal targets for pirates, interplanetary and FTL ships with desperate crews seeking access to key resources that may fetch a high price or even ensure the continued survival of some distant outpost. Given these risks, as well as the time delays between ordering goods and their receipt by pod, would elevate the role of chartercraft in interstellar commerce. These chartercraft would be independently owned privateers that would provide a range of spaceborne transport and security services for a fee. This could include taking passengers between systems, providing local security for pod lanes and holding areas, as well as even perhaps more clandestine activities. As almost all major planets and systems lack the capacity to maintain their own spaceborne anti-piracy fleet, this would provide an opportunity for charter privateers and the Coalition to step into that void. Probably the best way to describe the Coalition is that of a 14th century European merchant guild, something like the Hanseatic League in northern Germany. It's not a mega corporation or even a single cohesive trading company like the Dutch East Indies Company. Instead, it's more of a guild of independent merchants and privateers that band together to try and establish some form of control or authority over interstellar trade. Or at least, that is how it started. Despite this, the structure still maintains the fundamental independence of the individual captains, while also binding them through mutual benefit and codes of conduct, as well as tithes to that of the Coalition. Now, as the Coalition has aged, it itself would have something of an administrative arm, and this could also cause some tensions with the captains as to ultimately who benefits from the activities of the guild. Say a Coalition administrator negotiates an exclusive trade agreement with the settlement, most likely through coercion or some form of incentive, and then charters guild members to leverage that trade. This opens up opportunities for fostering corruption, favoritism, Byzantine politics, and even violence internally within the Coalition. But both of these aspects, the administrators and the merchants, would seek to coalesce together and ensure that they worked in concert to prevent non-coalition ships, known as free flag vessels or free flaggers, to be kept isolated, suppressed, and ultimately sidelined. The diaspora is huge, and humanity, while everywhere in the region, is highly fragmented. There are lots of opportunities for non-coalition ships of varying types and styles to try and make a living for themselves and justify the risks of the malady. Certainly those risks are often better than struggling at subsistent level conditions on the planet they were born at. But whenever a craft or even a small trading group rises above its station, the coalition is there to quickly stamp down on these upstarts. For while the coalition itself has a code of conduct, this relates only to interactions between the coalition privateers and those parties to which the coalition has formal agreements. Outside of this, privateer conduct is effectively lawless, and many ships will often seek out isolated and defenseless outposts to effectively raid, pillage and exploit, typically under the threat of violence. Small settlements who live on the edge of demise are typically starved for visits by pod and ship and will be dependent on such visits for essentials. This is not unlike the relationship between the Weyland-Yutani and the outer colonies in the alien universe. So when a ship arrives in the skies above a settlement, the initial reaction from the colonists might be one of hope. But this can soon turn to dread when the ship's crew, coalition or free flagger abuse, rob, rape and kill those helpless colonists. This, however, opens up even further opportunities for conflict. Egregious actions by the coalition privateers might be sufficiently heinous to warrant excommunication, and another coalition ship might be sent to hunt them down. Similarly, contracts might be posted by planetary leaders or settlement councils, which may attract the interest of a free flagger ship, some of whom have developed reputation as coalition ship killers. Let's also talk about currency. I think the best way for us to think of this is of a single universal currency that is accepted on all planet systems and outposts. This wouldn't be a single currency by fiat because we don't have a uniform universal diaspora government, but it'd be more like that of the Spanish dollar or the pieces of 8 in global trade between the 15th and 18th centuries. The Spanish Empire's global trade network made the Spanish dollar the de facto currency of the world and was even legal tender in multiple countries, including the United States, until the 1850s. Here, however, I think that without FTL communications, it would be the coalition itself that would establish the currency, something like a coalition credit. We could even call this a number of things: a coal credit, a sea credit, a sea bill, or simply even a credit. This currency would represent a value on the ledger of the coalition guild itself, meaning the coalition would need to function as something of an interstellar banking institution. This would give form and function to why there are administrator parts of the coalition versus merchant parts of the coalition, as the former has grown significantly over time in line with this additional financial responsibility. It also allowed the organisation to position itself in the middle of trade between major powers and be viewed and positioned as something of a neutral broker and financial institution. But a lot of this trade will also be in the form of bartering, particularly with smaller colonies and settlements. And finally, let's talk about location. The coalition's history would invariably have started as a merchant guild in a single system, then expanded. The obvious candidate would be that of the Tyson Sector Compact, the largest and most integrated multi-system regional authority in the diaspora. This regionalised federation, which we will explore in detail in another time, would have to be an optimal location for a nascent group of merchants to establish their brand and operations. They may have even started as something as more of a legitimate and lawful guild, but as ships and crews of the coalition spread beyond compact borders to the wider diaspora, the authority became more fragmented, if not completely lacking, and this would have incentivized more lawless, corrupt, and brigand-like behaviour. And I think that's going to be enough for this video. This has been a bit longer than most that we've covered to date, but we've obviously covered a lot of content. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you go and subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when new videos are going to drop. And that is where we're going to leave this concept and video. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and may the journey continue. Hey!